Air traffic control versus pilots.
Gear up. Watch your speed. Bring the power back.
Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel 7-4 Gear is all about aviation. I want to thank all of you in the 7-4 crew for continuing to send me these videos. Without your help, I couldn't keep it going. If you have a video that you think would be good for this series, the two easiest places to send to me, my Instagram or the free form 74gear.com. Let's get into it.
Amerijet 880 Heavy North Tower, yep.
Amerijet 880 over.
Amerijet 880 Heavy, North Tower, wind calm, only 22 left, clear to land, crossing wake turbulence, flying heavy, 777.
2 left, clear to land, Amerijet 880 Heavy. And Tower, Amerijet 880 Heavy going around.
Amerijet 880 Heavy, roger, fly heading 170, maintain 3000.
Heading 170, 3000. Gear up. Watch your speed. Bring the power back.
Amerijet 880 Heavy, turn right, heading 260, maintain 3000.
Right 260, 3000, Amerijet 880 Heavy.
Amerijet 880 Heavy, say reason for go around.
Not established.
Roger.
A term that I've probably never talked about is at the very beginning of this video, he says, "Are you up?" It's a way to ask the pilots if you've switched over to that controller's frequency. The controller before will hand you off to the next controller, and if the pilots haven't dialed in and spun in the numbers and picked up on that radio, the controller may be just talking into dead air for that particular aircraft. So he says, "Are you up?" Listen right here.
Amerijet 880 Heavy North Tower, yep.
That's a way for the controller to know that the pilots are on that frequency so he can start giving them instructions, that he's not just giving a bunch of instructions and nobody's hearing. So I was flying into Newark a lot last year. If you saw that first vlog that I did, I was going in and out of Newark. Now that is a very congested airspace. There is a lot going on. The talking happens really fast. If you're not paying attention and not ahead of your plane, it's very easy to get behind and get jammed up. When I went in there, I was going in all month for my 16 days or so. I was going in there every single day, so I got very comfortable with going in and out of that airport. But the captains that I had kept switching. So I'd get a captain for 2 or 3 days, and a different guy, then a different guy. And on probably about the 10th day or so, I got a guy, and we went in there, and they put us in a very tight line. We were very close, and he goes, "Man, Kelsey, this is not going to work out." I said, "No, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine." We get in, we land, and we get off the runway, and he says to me, "All right, next time they call me for doing one of these trips into Newark, I'm calling in sick." But luckily, there was no yelling like this.
Watch your speed.
My point in talking about how congested that airspace is that if you're not ahead of your aircraft, it's easy to fall behind, and if you fall behind, you're going to end up doing a go-around. But this transmission really confused me.
Gear up.
On a flight deck, you have 2 pilots, obviously on a normal commercial aircraft, and those 2 pilots each have their own individual tasks. You have a pilot flying, who's the person who's controlling the aircraft, and you have a pilot monitoring. That pilot monitoring is reviewing and overseeing everything you're doing. They're talking with air traffic control, and in some cases, they're doing things like moving the gear lever down or moving the flap lever, things like that. So those are the 2 roles that you have. Now, in any given situation, the captain can say, "My aircraft," in which point you take controls from the other person, the first officer who could be flying, I'm guessing in this case. So if they say, "My aircraft," it's theirs, then they switch roles immediately. And it's something that you train for since, I don't know, the beginning of flight school, when your flight instructor is teaching you how to do things and you do something wrong, they say "my controls" and "my aircraft," and then they save the plane from getting into a bad spot. So that is the normal way that it's always been. But what's interesting here is that typically on a go-around, the pilot flying gets told positive rate from the pilot monitoring, who's the pilot talking on the radio. So when this guy says "gear up" and screams it like that, like what you hear right here where he says "gear up,"
Gear up.
what he should be screaming is positive climb or positive rate. Different airlines have a different word. And what that means is that's an indicator to the pilot who's flying the aircraft that the plane is going away from the ground. You never want to put your gear up until you're going away from the ground, and then once you're going away from the ground, it's counting as a lot of drag to slow the plane down and slow it from climbing. You've seen in some of my viral debrief videos, I talk about pilots not putting the gear up. It's because there's a lot going on during a go-around, and even though we train for it, it's not something that we do a lot in real life. So that guy, when he's talking to the other pilot or screaming at him, what he should be screaming is positive climb, positive rate, something like that. And that should tell that other pilot, that should say, "Oh, gear up." And that's what he should be saying. On any aircraft, these are called flaps. On every aircraft, those flaps have a set speed, a maximum speed that the plane can travel while those flaps are out. And as the flaps go out more and more, the plane has to go slower and slower. You'll notice as you're flying around as a passenger, you'll notice the plane will start slowing down as those flaps keep coming out. So there's a speed limit for them. So it's important to understand part of the reason that this pilot is screaming at him is watch your speed is because those flaps are probably still all the way out and you don't want to exceed the speed limit. The thing that's important to know though is in aviation everything is tested way beyond the limitation that you're given. So if you get told, okay, at flaps 3, your fastest you can go is 180 knots, it's not like at 190 knots those flaps are going to get ripped off and end up in a lawn ornament if you live underneath an airport. That's not something to worry about, but there is a set speed for a reason, and so you never want to exceed that. The other thing to note is that if you are hand flying the plane yourself and you exceed that speed, the plane will narc you out. It will tell the company that you violated the plane speed limits. But if you were to be flying with the autopilot and the autopilot were to mess it up because of a gust of wind or whatever the situation is, it will not report itself. So think of flying a plane kind of like flying or living with your little brother. If you do something that you're not supposed to do, mom's going to know right away. But if they do it, somehow miraculously, that message never gets passed along. This highlights that the pilot was probably behind the aircraft.
Not established.
If you're newer on a plane or maybe you're a weak pilot, it can happen that you aren't thinking ahead as far as the speeds that you're going to need and things like that. And what will happen is that you'll get what we call behind the aircraft. And if you get behind the aircraft, it can be trouble to get your speed slowed up and go down and know what's going on, be ready, get your gear down, all those different things that you need to do in order to land the plane. If you're new on the plane, you can have a sensory overload. I've talked about it in some of my viral debrief where you get a sensory overload of what's going on and you just kind of freeze. That can happen as a new pilot or a weaker pilot. That will happen. And it's possible that that's what happened here because he said you're not established, which is kind of a vague term to mean you didn't have everything set up the way you needed to have it set up. You didn't have all your gear down. You didn't have all your flaps out. It's kind of a vague term. You could technically say it's not stabilized, but not established is maybe another way that they're saying it. However, if you are behind as a pilot, what never helps is your other pilot doing this.
Watch your speed. Bring the power back.
Someone screaming at you like that while they're flying or anywhere is usually an indication of two things. One, they are just a really weak pilot and are very insecure with their abilities, and so they are uncomfortable, and by you doing something that makes them uncomfortable, they react in a way that's really negative with them screaming at you. Or two, they're just a jerk. Or maybe they're both. Either way, that's typically what you'll get with people who are screaming, unless you're just doing something that's reckless and very dangerous and you've been annoying them for weeks. They may just be fed up with you. But typically, in my experience, that's what I've noticed when I'm flying with guys that I've seen them screaming at other people. They typically fit into those two categories, which is never fun to fly with. In my opinion, the right decision for the pilot would have been when that pilot was getting the plane so far behind, or they were getting so far behind that they weren't able to save the plane and get the plane safely landed. That pilot, I'm guessing the captain, should have said, my aircraft, taken it over and did what he needed to do in order to safely land the plane. And then once they're on the ground, they can go in and park, and once they're parked, they can talk about it. Letting the pilot do a go-around is fine. There's nothing really wrong with that per se, but if you're going to have him do a go-around and then you're just going to scream at him the whole way up, that is not going to facilitate everything. In my opinion, that makes things a lot more dangerous because now this guy is already rattled. He's doing something which is not that we do very often, and you're over there screaming at him. I had a go-around, man, years ago, going into Chicago, and I could see it a long way out. We were right behind another plane. That plane was small, and that guy was saying, oh, I'm going to land long because he wanted to get up. And I just knew maybe like 3 miles out, there's no way that we're going to land. This is going to be a go-around for sure. Now, when we came in and we got told to do a go-around, we were in Chicago. They tell us to go around, and we just have a lot of things that are going on. Even though I saw it coming, it was still a lot going on. And I was flying, and the captain said, oh, okay, great, we get it all done, squared away. But we really had to work as a team to get that all done quickly, follow the instructions from air traffic control, and come back around and land again. But if you have someone on the other seat who's supposed to be your teammate, who's supposed to be helping you, and they're sitting there screaming at you, that's just going to rattle you more in a situation where you're already a bit rattled doing something you don't normally do. To me, it's very unprofessional. Now, in my opinion, if you are a new pilot at an airline and something like this happens to you where you're flying with somebody that's being, I don't know, a jerk like that, you can say something to them or you can just bite your tongue. I had a guy who was a jerk to me years ago at a different airline when I was still on probation. I was new at that airline, and I just bit my tongue because I thought, okay, I'm on probation. I'm not going to try to ruffle any feathers here. And it had nothing to do with the flying. It was something else on the ground, and so I just bit my tongue. Once I'm off probation, then I will say something to the person. Not escalate it, not make it a bigger deal than it needs to be, but just let them know, like, hey, you don't need to talk to me like that. That's not necessary. Because it lets them know that they're out of line with their attitude and the way that they're talking to you. The other thing that you can learn from that, though, especially if you're a first officer, is how does that make you feel? And do you want other people that you're working with to feel that way when they're with you? And if the answer is, I feel like crap and I don't like that, then when you become a captain, keep that in mind so that way when you get a first officer who's lost, a little bit new, doesn't know what's going on, you also were there at one point, you can mentor them and help them and coach them and help them get to where they want to go instead of being a jerk, which is what this guy's doing here.
United 326 is ready. All right, now 326, runway 1 out of center, line up and wait, sir. The current wind is 170 at 8, gust 20. I'm going to have multiple aircraft crossing the runway ahead of you.
19 center, line up and wait, United 326.
46, 51, turn right heading 320.
320, hands down, 46.
United 326, turn right heading 230, runway 19 center, cliff takeoff heading 230.
Heading 230, 19 center, clip takeoff, United 326.
I want to set the scene here so you understand exactly what's going on here. Listen to what the controller told United as they were lining up onto the runway.
Line up and wait, sir. The current wind is 170 at 8, gust 20. I'm going to have multiple aircraft crossing the runway ahead of you.
What that says to the pilots is, pull up onto the runway, line up in the direction that you're going to take off, set your brake, and we're going to have multiple planes crossing down later on down the runway. There's going to be multiple planes crossing. So you're not clear for takeoff. We're going to cross some planes down there, and then we're going to clear you. That's what he's telling to this pilot. This is a picture of the airport where all this is taking place. The United pilot is told to line up and wait on this runway right here, which is 19 center, because there are some planes that are planning to cross later on down the runway. What often happens is planes will land on 19 right, and then they'll want to cross multiple planes here on these given taxiways all at the same time. By crossing multiple planes all at the same time, you can make things more efficient. You can let planes keep taking off and line up 2 or 3 or 4 planes along those taxiways and then cross them all at the same time. So if you ever landed and then sat and held short of a taxiway or held short of a runway on a taxiway for 4 or 5 minutes while you heard multiple planes take off and thought, man, we could have crossed by now and got to the other side, what the controller is doing is he's getting other planes lined up and taking off. And it just makes it faster and more efficient. Otherwise, he's got to cross one plane, let that plane get across, then tell the other plane to take off. So even though a plane is crossing, he can't take them off until that plane is all the way across the runway, because you can imagine if he was trying to cross the runway and something happened, like he had a flat tire, now this other plane is barreling down really fast and that plane is stuck in the middle of the runway. So what they'll do is they'll line them all up along those different taxiways, cross them all at the same time, and then continue firing off planes for takeoff. It's just a faster way to do things. So despite these United pilots getting told that, they're planning on lining up and waiting on 19 center, which is kind of like telling a pilot, hey, get here, and as soon as I tell you it's time to go, you're ready to go. Kind of like a racehorse. As soon as those gates open, as soon as they get told you're clear for takeoff, a lot of pilots are like, let's go. And that's what happens. Listen what happens next.
Skywest 3721 at Whiskey 4, cross runway 19 center, and hold short of taxiway Yankee, please.
Cross 19 center, hold short of the Yankee on Whiskey 4, 3721.
America 2784 at Whiskey 2, cross 19 center, and hold short of taxi via Yankee 6 there, and hold short taxiway Yankee. So cross the runway, make a left to join Yankee 6 behind the small ass right there.
Clear to cross 19 center, Whiskey 2, join Yankee 6 and hold short Yankee, America 2784.
And ground, or tower, United 326 is rejected for aircraft on the runway.
United 326, did you get a key for takeoff there?
You did clear for takeoff, sir.
United 326, right.
And American 2784, we stopped now. We're going to cross now.
In that first part, he told United they were cleared for takeoff. And then on the second part, he told 2 different aircraft they were cleared to taxi across the runway that United was planning on taking off on. This is the runway United's taking off on. And first they told SkyWest to cross here at Whiskey 4, and then they told American to cross up here closer to the takeoff area at Whiskey 2. But you'll notice that American never actually crossed the runway. That's because when the pilots are crossing a runway, we verify that it's clear on the left and clear on the right. and then we say, hey, we're cleared to cross. So every pilot is looking, even though the planes in this situation are taking off from the left, people will look out the right-hand window because you don't know what's going on. There could be somebody that's lost, that's flying and ends up landing on a runway the opposite direction, or whatever the situation is. So you always look out both windows to verify. So in this case, United is taking off, and the American pilots are looking out going, that guy looks like he's moving. So they're not going to move. And that's what happened. Listen here.
And American 2784, we stopped now. We're going to cross now.
Now the SkyWest plane was the first one that got cleared to cross, and they were further down the runway. Look again at this chart. A SkyWest plane is a regional plane, so it's going to be a lot quicker to move, and they're crossing the runway right here. Now if they were listening and paying attention to everything that was going on, they would have heard that United just got cleared to take off from 19 Center. But all they heard is SkyWest. They were just filtering out everything else that was being said. They heard their call sign and their flight number, and they got told that they were cleared to cross. They weren't listening to everything that was going on. Had they been listening, they would have heard that this controller messed up, and they messed up really big. This is a huge mistake on the controller side. But this just goes to show you how many multiple phases of things need to go wrong in order for there to actually be an accident. This controller made a mistake, a big one, no doubt about it. These pilots at SkyWest should have been listening to what was going on down there. The pilots at United should have thought, hey, we're clear to take off 19 Center and you're clearing people to cross the runway. Now it's possible that they aborted very early on and they didn't just make the call till later. I don't know. But it's possible that they heard the first one or maybe the second one. It sounds like probably the second one where they aborted their actual takeoff. By aborting their takeoff, they're hearing planes or they're seeing planes that are crossing down on the runway. And anytime you're on a takeoff roll, it doesn't matter if you're going 10 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour. If you're moving and there's someone that's on there, you're going to stop. You're not just going to anticipate, despite what they show you in the Hollywood movies, you're not just going to anticipate that they're going to cross in time for you to go. So they aborted and they did the right thing, so they prevented it. And then American never even went out onto the runway because they could see that they were moving. What would have had to happen is United would have had to keep going despite planes crossing the runway. American would have not listened or not looked, and they would have had to go. And the controller would have had to tell them they were all clear to cross. And you can see none of those things happened at all. So multiple things would have had to happen for there to be an accident here, but this was the initial key.
Runway 1 out of center, line up and wait, sir. The current wind is 170 at 8, gust 20. I'm going to have multiple aircraft cross the runway ahead of you.
Had the United plane lined up and waited and then heard and listened to what the controller is saying with multiple aircraft crossing, as soon as they got cleared for takeoff, the United pilots could have queried and asked air traffic control, hey, are you going to cross the other planes first or just confirm we're cleared for takeoff? But they didn't, and that's not really their fault. They got cleared, but they could have asked that. Had they been really listening to what was going on, they could have asked that, and the controller would have said, oh yes, takeoff clearance canceled, or go ahead and take off, I'll cross them afterwards. But unfortunately what happens is you trust the controller so much, they rarely make errors like this. This is a major error. They'll rarely make that type of an error. So when they clear you for takeoff, you're, hey, we're ready to go. And that's unfortunately what happened here. But as you can see, all the safety measures and all the different things like pilots aborting on the takeoff by seeing the other plane crossing, American seeing that the plane is moving so they don't even go out on the runway, all those things were set up and prevented it from even turning into even a remote problem. It wasn't even a close call. Okay, this last one's a funny one. Someone just sent it to me. I have to add it.
Kennedy ground, Egypt Air 986.
Egypt Air 986 Heavy, Kennedy ground.
Go ahead, Egypt Air 986.
You're calling me, sir.
Yes, affirmative. Hold short taxiway Alpha.
Okay, save request.
He doesn't even say anything. I don't know. That's just so funny to me because he calls him up and then he starts asking like he's air traffic control. I don't know. I saw that one. I thought it was so funny, especially this part here.
You're calling me, sir.
If you want to see some other pilots versus air traffic control, check out this video here. And if you want to see some pilots struggling to fly their aircraft, check out this video up here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.